Okay, let's start talking about tools first. So we have pins. So these are dressmakers pins. These are ballpoint pins, and these are larger ballpoint pins, which you might use for quilt making. So we can just put a few of those out there so you can see what they look like. Obviously, the ones with the heads are easier to hold. The dressmakers pins, that they're all metal. These heads are plastic, or you can get them in glass. These are all metal, so they're easy to iron over. You can put them on your fabric or your garment and just iron directly over them. A place to hold your pins. So I have this magnetic pin holder. You can use this, or you can just use a fabric pin cushion or something, even a piece of fabric, somewhere to keep them collected. Magnetic pin holder is easy because you can just sweep them up like that. Sewing needles are the next important thing. This is the kit that you've been given. So there's a whole collection of sewing needles in here. They run the gamut. So whatever the task is that you need to do, there's a sewing needle for it. They come in different lengths and thicknesses, and with different heads and points depending on the task at hand. When you've picked the right needle for the job at hand, make sure that the eye of the needle is large enough for you to the thread to pass through, and easily, because if it's too difficult to pass through, if it kind of gets stuck, you're going to wear away at the thread. And when you're shopping for needles, you'll notice that they come in different numbers and sizes. So you can see in here the numbers. I'll just zoom in a little bit so you can see it a little bit more clearly. The numbers are generally from 1 to 18. They can go as high as 28. A 1 will be the longest and thickest, getting shorter and thinner as you get closer to 18. I frequently use 3 different types of sewing needles. So I'll just put them down here. This is your typical sort of sewing needle here. This is what we call our sharps. So it's quite flexible. You'll know when you feel them in your hand that they're quite flexible. This is a personal favorite of mine. It's a Shishiko needle. It's not in this kit. They're longer, they're stronger, so there's very little bend when you put one of these in your hand. It's very inflexible. It allows you to gather a lot of fabric on the needle, which is great for really straight lines. And another needle you'll be using is a tapestry needle. This has got a big head on it here, and a big eye in the head rather, to put your kind of wool typically for tapestry through. And it's got a very rounded tip so that you don't split fibers when you're going through garment. So those are examples out of your kit of the needles. Another tool I use is tailor's chalk, which is really handy for making lines on fabrics. So, you know, don't be afraid of making marks. We do it all the time. Straight lines are important. And it's easier when you have a guide like this. This does it really easily. And then you can just dust it off when you're finished, or rub it together and it'll come away. The next really important tool is a scissors or a thread clippers. This is a Japanese pair. These are pretty inexpensive, and you can get them at any good supply store. The seam ripper that you're familiar with, if you ever need to undo stitching, the first stitch we're going to look at is a basting stitch. So you will be undoing this. That's a stitch that you do rip all of the time. And the last thing is a thimble. I don't always use it, but it's good to have it on hand for when you're pushing needle through really stiff fabric. So it's a good little tool to have. So there we go. We've got started with our tools. Of course, the important thing too is threads. The threads run the gamut, just like needles do as well. Good quality threads are really important. There's so many different types of threads available, an almost overwhelming selection. So anything that can be threaded through the eye of a needle can be used, particularly for experimental work. Today, I'm going to use this heavier polyester thread. It's made by a great thread company called Gutermann. They're a German company. And this is their number 30 thread. So if I put our piece of fabric down, you can see it here. It is thicker than your average sort of sewing thread. And to give you an idea of what that is, I'll just lay down a piece of more traditional sewing thread so you can see the difference in thickness between them. The Gutermann thread, the navy thread that I'm going to be working with today, is used generally for sports and casual wear, jeans, so a heavier material, and visible seams, like hand sewn effect buttonholes and ornamental seams rather. It's also used in leather goods, shoes, upholstery. In other words, it's really strong and it's thicker. So as I said, it's easier to see from this demonstration. Okay, let's get started.